ताल्लुकात से, उनके ख्यालात से और उनकी तस्नीफ़ात से आप वाकिफ़ होंगे। डॉक्टर शहजाद सलीम साहब एक अरसे से उनके साथ मुंसलिक रहे हैं और फ़िक्र इस्लामी के एक बड़े अहम मौजू जो तारीख़ इस्लाम के नाम से आपको आज पेश करेंगे, उस पर बरसों से वो काम कर रहे हैं। आपने 2010 में इसी मौजू पर PhD भी हासिल की और आज अपनी तहक़ीक़ का खुलासा आपके सामने रखेंगे। मैं गामदी साहब से पहले दरख्वास्त करता हूँ कि वो मुख्तसर तौर पर शहजाद सलीम साहब के बारे में और इस मौजू के बारे में आपको एक ओवरव्यू दें। गामदी साहब।
अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह रब्बिल आलमीन वस्सलातु वस्सलामु अला मुहम्मदिन नबीन व अऊज़ु बिल्लाहि मिनश शैतानिर रजीम बिस्मिल्लाहिर रहमानिर रहीम। ख़वातीन व हज़रात, आप में से हर शख्स इस बात से वाकिफ़ है कि हमारे दीन की बुनियाद अल्लाह की किताब कुरान मजीद है। ये कुरान मजीद ही है कि जिसको हम अल्लाह ताला के आखिरी पैगाम की हैसियत से पूरी दुनिया के सामने पेश करते हैं। दुनिया में दसियों किताबें लिखी गई हैं, बहुत से मुफक्किरीन पैदा हुए हैं, हुक्मा और उलमा की कमी नहीं है। दुनिया के हर इल्म में आपको एक पूरी की पूरी लाइब्रेरी मिल सकती है, लेकिन वो तन्हा किताब जिसके बारे में ये कहा जाता है कि ये इस ज़मीन पर अल्लाह की किताब है और जिस तरह नाजिल हुई उसी तरह हमारे पास मौजूद है, वो कुरान मजीद। कुरान मजीद के एक तालिब इल्म की हैसियत से हर शख्स के सामने ये अहम सवाल आता है कि ये किताब किस तरह नाजिल हुई, कैसे तरतीब दी गई, कब पेश की गई और हम तक ये अहद बहद किस तरह पहुंची। दीन के तालिब इल्म की हैसियत से ये सवाल मेरे सामने भी एक अहम सवाल की हैसियत से बरसों रहा है। चुनांचे मैंने इस्लाम पर जो अपनी तहकीक अपनी किताब मीज़ान में पेश की है, उसमें बहुत वज़ाहत के साथ ये बताया है कि कुरान मजीद के बारे में ये आम ख्याल दुरुस्त नहीं है कि रसूलुल्लाह सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम इसको नामुकम्मल सूरत में छोड़कर चले गए थे, ये बिखरे हुए औरात की सूरत में था, या कोई एक मरतब किताब की बजाय कुछ हड्डियों पर लिखा हुआ था, कुछ दूसरी चीज़ों पर लिखा हुआ था। बाद में कोई कमेटी बनाई गई और उसके ज़रिए से इस कुरान को मरतब करके लोगों के सामने पेश किया गया और अब हमारे पास भी इसका नुस्खा है। ये सैयदना उस्मान रज़ी अल्लाह अन्हु का तरतीब किया हुआ है। ये आम ख्याल है और इस आम ख्याल को आप किताबों में पढ़ते हैं, लोगों से सुनते हैं। तो मेरे सामने भी ये एक बड़ा सवाल था कि इसकी तहकीक होनी चाहिए। तो मैंने अपनी तहकीक का नतीजा अपनी किताब में बयान कर दिया है और 2007 से वो अहले इल्म के सामने है। उसमें मैंने कुरान मजीद की तारीख इससे बिल्कुल मुख्तलिफ पहलू से पेश की। मुझसे पहले भी बाज़ अहले इल्म ने लोगों को इस जानिब तवज्जो दिलाई और ये बताने की कोशिश की कि कुरान मजीद की तारीख के बारे में ये आम गलतफहमी है। कुरान मजीद रिसालत बाप सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम ही ने नहीं बल्कि ख़ुद अल्लाह ताला ने तरतीब दिया है और रिसालत बाप सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम उसको बिल्कुल आखिरी सूरत में देकर गए थे। वो किसी दूसरे के ज़रिए से मुरतब होकर हमें नहीं मिला। उनमें एक बड़ा नुमाया नात बर्र सगीर के एक जलीलुल कदर आलिम इमाम हमीदुद्दीन फराई का है انہوں نے بھی اسی نقطہ نظر کو اپنی تفاسیر میں پیش فرمایا ہے۔ میری بڑی آرزو اور خواہش تھی کہ کوئی شخص اس کو موضوع بنا کر اس پر مفصل تحقیق پیش کرے۔ میں چونکہ کچھ دوسرے پروجیکٹس میں مصروف تھا، تو میں اللہ تعالیٰ کا شکر ادا کرتا ہوں کہ ڈاکٹر شہزاد سلیم صاحب کو اللہ تعالیٰ نے توفیق دی کہ وہ اس کو اپنی زندگی کا ایک بڑا موضوع بنائے۔ چنانچہ کم و بیش 2 دہائی پیشتر انہوں نے اس پروجیکٹ پر کام کی ابتدا کی، بلکہ اس وقت ہی کر دی تھی جب یہ پی ایچ ڈی کر رہے تھے۔ پھر آہستہ آہستہ اس کے مختلف پہلوؤں پر ان کے کام کے بعض شروعات سامنے آتے رہے، اور اہل علم کے ساتھ بھی اس معاملے میں کچھ تبادلہ خیالات ہوتا رہا۔ ہمارے ہاں بھی بعض چیزیں زیر بحث رہی، بعض مجالس میں ان کو پیش بھی کیا گیا، تاہم یہ تحقیق کئی برسوں کے بعد پایہ تکمیل کو پہنچی، اور اب یہ کتابی صورت میں اشاعت کے لیے تیار ہے۔ میں نے اندازہ نہیں کر سکتا کہ یہاں جو لوگ اس وقت موجود ہیں ان کو اس سے کتنی دلچسپی ہو سکتی ہے، لیکن میں یہ ضرور کہہ سکتا ہوں کہ قرآن مجید پر جو لوگ بھی ایمان رکھتے ہیں ان کے لیے یہ ایک بڑا اہم موضوع ہے۔ انہیں معلوم ہونا چاہیے کہ جس کتاب کو اللہ کی کتاب سمجھتے ہیں اس کے بارے میں یہ بات واضح ہو کہ وہ انہیں کس صورت میں ملی ہے، کیسے ترتیب پائی ہے، اس کی تاریخ کیا ہے اور کس طریقے سے پہنچی ہے۔ تو ڈاکٹر شہزاد سلیم صاحب اس میں اپنی تحقیقات کا خلاصہ آپ کے سامنے پیش کریں گے، اور اس کے بعد اگر اس سے متعلق کوئی سوالات ہوں گے یا اس سے متعلق سوالات کے علاوہ بھی کوئی سوالات ہوں گے تو انشاءاللہ ہم ایک تفصیلی مجلس میں ان کا جواب بھی دیں گے۔ تو یہ خیال کر لیجیے گا کہ یہ علمی موضوع ہے، تھوڑا سا اس کے لیے صبر چاہیے ہوگا کہ آپ اس تحقیق کو سن سکیں۔ یہ مختصر بات ہے جو میں نے آپ کے سامنے کی ہے، اور جو صاحب علم آپ کو اس تحقیق سے متعارف کرا رہے ہیں وہ اسلامی علوم کے بھی ماہر ہیں، جدید علوم پر بھی ان کی نظر ہے، اور انہوں نے اس کام کو بہت دقت نظر کے ساتھ انجام دیا ہے۔ کئی مراحل میں یہ کام انجام پایا ہے، اور میں چونکہ پہلے دن سے آخری دن تک اس سے متعلق رہا ہوں، یہ میرے نقطہ نظر پر مبنی کام تھا، تو اس وجہ سے اس کے مختلف مراحل کو بھی میں نے خود دیکھا ہے، اور جہاں کہیں ممکن ہوا ہے وہاں کچھ رہنمائی بھی کی۔ میرا احساس یہ ہے کہ ہم سب کو اس بہت غیر معمولی موضوع کو اسی توجہ سے سننا چاہیے جس کا یہ مستحق ہے۔ یہ مختصر معلومات میں نے آپ کے سامنے پیش کر دی ہے۔ اب اگر ڈاکٹر شہزاد سلیم صاحب کو کسی اور نے رسماً دعوت نہیں دینی تو میرا خیال ہے کہ وہ اپنا خطبہ شروع کر سکتے ہیں۔ اقول قولی ھذا واستغفر اللہ لی ولکم ولسائر المسلمین۔
یہ آپ کے صاحبزادے یہیں آپ کے ستاروں میں ساتھ میں۔
بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, I am deeply honored and also grateful to all of you to give me the chance of presenting some of my research, and I'm also greatly indebted to my teacher and mentor Javed Ahmed Amidi for his kind remarks and also for his continued support and guidance throughout the time I have been working on this subject. My work began on this subject approximately somewhere in 1999, when I was called upon to teach students the subject of history of the Quran. And these students primarily belong to the graduate class, master's class that we were conducting in our own institute. And when I was given this subject to be taught in the institute, I thought it would be an easy sailing because as far as the history of the Quran is concerned, every person who is here in the hall, he or she is well aware of the fact that the Quran is a divine book by whom it has been promised that the Almighty will protect it ever since its revelation. And hence there is not much need to divulge the history except for the fact to present the various stages and the mannerism in which the book had been revealed and collected and then transmitted to the Ummah. So this is how I started off. But lo and behold, it was very earlier on in 1999 when I just began teaching and preparing for the subject that I came across a number of questions which disturbed me a lot and also led me to find out the truth as far as I could regarding these points that came across me. And I would like to present some of those questions, not all of them, but some of them before you, so that I'm able to carry you through my voyage, if I can call it a voyage, which I undertook many years ago and which just ended a couple of months ago, and after which I can perhaps say to the best of my own ability that I was able to solve or at least present what had been solved and which I would call as unsolved riddles of the Quran in a manner in which, of course, every word can be refined and perfected later on, but perhaps basing it on the research of, as my teacher just told you, on one of the famous celebrated scholars of the subcontinent, Amiruddin Farahi. I think I was able to present before the academia a possible solution to some of the very, very disturbing and nagging questions which have arisen regarding the history of the Quran. So just to briefly recount some of these questions before you so that you're able to understand that it's not just a question of delivering the fact that the Quran is a preserved book revealed by the Almighty and we have it in our hands in a very preserved form, and that's the end of that. So it's not as simple as it seems. And let me start off by introducing some of these questions to you. And as my mentor just rightly pointed out, some of these questions might be new to you, and you might not be exposed to some of the information that might be coming your way at this time. But please bear with patience, and it's just the presentation of a student of Islam, and some of the answers that are being presented in the light that they are possible answers. Of course, further critique can develop and reform them. So viewers, the first question that I was faced with when I started off teaching this subject almost 20 years ago was that there are 5 versions of the Quran which are prevalent in the Muslim Ummah. And when I say 5 versions, I am not talking about any pronunciation issue or qiraat issue. I am talking about complete set of the Quran which have different words, different from the Quran that we see in front of us today in the United States and some other parts of the world. Although they might not be large in number, but there are 11 countries in this world, besides a major part of the 54 countries that we are aware of, all Muslim countries, which have different versions of the Quran in which the Quranic verses are written in a manner in which the meaning changes at times, and at times, although the meaning does not change, but similar words are used to represent the same content that the other Qurans do. So if you could just concentrate on the screen, I'll just give you a brief overview that these 5 versions of the Quran, how they exist. So one of the versions, as you can see, is called the version, the way we call it is the Rawaya of Hafs from his teacher Asim. I'll explain this later on, but just to keep a small check on this, that is the tag with which the Quran is being introduced. The Quran that we know, that all of you must have studied when you were growing up, is the Quran that is right in front of you. And this is called the Quran of Hafs, and basically it's the Rawaya of Hafs from the Qiraat of Asim. As I said, just please ignore these words. They are just meant to tag or basically give a heading to the Quran. I'll explain them later. And most parts of the Muslim world, I would say more than 95% of people in the Muslim world read this Quran, and which of course includes all of you. So then there's another version which is found in Morocco and Algeria. and this is called the Rawaya of Warsh from the Qiraat of Nafi. So this is the second part of the Quran. I'll explain just in a while what exactly I mean. They are different from the ones that we are used to. So this is the second version which is found in Morocco and Algeria. And then we have a third riwayah from Khalun. Again, he's also a student of Imam Nafi. So we have this third version. This is found in Libya and in Tunisia. And then a fourth version which is called the riwayah of Duri from the Qiraat of Abu Amr. As I said, all these names might be Greek to you, but at the moment just bear with me. These are the names of very famous reciters of the Quran, with whom these readings got very famous and they were attributed to these readers. So this Quran is read in parts of Sudan. And then we have the riwayah of Hisham from the Qiraat of Ibn Amir, and this is read in parts of Yemen. So these are the 5 versions which have been published, almost all of them, by Saudi Arabia. So whenever you go to Hajj or Umrah, you must be getting that green Quran from the Saudi authority as a hadiyah, and you will find that the Moroccan Haji will be given the Quran which is being read in his part of the country, and the Pakistani Haji will be given the Quran that we know. It is the one that we are used to. And similarly, the rest of the people, the way they stand as far as the Quran is concerned. So these 5 Qurans, the way they prevail, I am now just going to give you examples how they differ from each other. And as I said, these 11 countries in which these Qurans are now found, they are actually read in the madrasas, they are taught in the madrasas the way we teach our own children, the way we have been taught the Quran. The Qaris are coming and teaching them, or schools teaching them. So exactly the way the Quran that we know was taught to us, the 4 other Qurans that I have just introduced them to you, they are taught in the same way as our Quran is taught to us. So just to give you an example. So just for example, the Quran that we have with us has these words, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ هُوَ الْغَنِيُّ الْحَمِيدُ. But if you read other Qurans, one of the other versions will not have a huwa, and it will have in the Allah al-Ghaniyyul Hamid. The huwa is not there in the other part of the Quran. So another example is that you find a difference in singular and plural. For example, in Surah Tahrim, the Quran that we are used to, the Quran that we study, it says, وَصَدَّقَتْ بِكَلِمَاتِ رَبِّهَا وَكُتُبِهِ وَكَانَتْ مِنَ الْقَانِتِينَ. Very famous verse of Surah Tahrim. However, in another version, which is found in some other parts of the world, the words are written as وَصَدَّقَتْ بِكَلِمَاتِ رَبِّهَا وَكِتَابِهِ. So we have a plural in our Quran. However, in some of the other versions, the actual citation is kitabihi. Then we have a difference in verbs. One example is that, as you can see on the screen, وَإِذْ نَجَّيْنَاكُمْ مِنْ آلِ فِرْعَوْنَ يَسُومُونَكُمْ سُوءَ الْعَذَابِ يُذَبِّحُونَ أَبْنَاءَكُمْ or يُقَتِّلُونَ أَبْنَاءَكُمْ, as in other versions says. However, the other versions, instead of having this, has some other words, and these words are وَإِذْ أَنْجَيْنَاكُمْ مِنْ آلِ فِرْعَوْنَ يَسُومُونَكُم سُوءَ الْعَذَابِ. So one of them has يَقْتُلُونَ and the other one has يُقَتِّلُونَ. Although these words are written similarly, but simply if the declensions of the Arab change, the meaning also changes. And similarly, you can see that so there are some other technical differences as well. But just to give you a more practical example, you can see that the Quran that we study, the words of the wuzu ayat, or the ayat of ablution in Surah Nisa and Surah Ma'idah, the way the words are framed, we all of us, whenever we do wuzu, of course we wash our feet. The way we wash our face, the way we wash our hands, there is a certain sequence. But the last part that we do is we wash our feet. Isn't that correct? However, in one of the versions, which is the version of Nafi and is read in North Africa, in Morocco, in Algeria, and some other parts of the North African continent, the verse is read in a manner in which feet don't need to be washed. And if you just do masa on the feet, that is sufficient. The way the words are written, and in that case it will be sufficient for the wuzu to be completed if you just do masa on your feet except washing them. This is just one example how meanings can change in different versions of the Quran. And there are several other examples. I'm just going to move on to the next question because this is the most glaring question that actually came before me, that the Ummah has 5 different Qurans. 95% of the Ummah has the same Quran as we are aware of, but the rest of the 5%, which actually consists of 11 different countries, has a different version of the Quran. And these 4 versions, except our one, are again different from each other as well. There's a difference between these four as well. So this was just an example how this difference was there. So this was the first question that stayed in my mind, and which actually was quite unnerving and disturbing by the face of it. And I can see on your faces also that you are pretty disturbed when you heard of this detail, perhaps for the first time. Now the second thing that bothered me, and the second thing that came to light, was that this is the case of these 11 countries, that people physically read the Quran on different readings. They read it variously. They are variants. But other than that, if you take out your tafsir books, earliest tafsir books, earliest hadith books, earliest fiqh manuals, you'll find splashes and splashes of Quranic verses being read differently in our tafsir books. And most of our tafsir books would say that this verse has also been read like this and can also be read like this. Although they might not have been physically read like the way I had said earlier on, physically in a particular country you'll find people reading them, the common masses reading them. But in the case of tafsir books, you'll find the allowance of that mufassir telling us, the person who reads the tafsir, that this ayat can also be read as a different ayat, and then he'll give that variation. And you can just see a single page which I have displayed before you. The Quran approximately of this size has about 700 pages. And this is just one page. And you can see that, although it's very minutely written, but if you can come closer, you'll find that this one page has about 20 variations of reading the Quran. 20 variations. And if you multiply it by 700 pages, because you see, an average Quran has so many pages, you can just imagine the amount of variation. You'll find almost every single verse being allowed to be read by our Mufassirun in some other way, because according to them, the Sahaba or the Tabi'un read it in that way as well. And the variation, as I said, is in singular and in plural, and at times i'rab, and at times verb declensions, at times it changes the meaning, at times it refines the meaning, and at times it just is a synonymous thing. It just gives another meaning, another Arabic sentence, but the meaning remains the same. Nonetheless, the problem is still there, that all these Mufassirun say that we can read the Quran variously and these various readings actually in terminology are called variant readings, or the qira'at of the Quran. The third thing that came to my notice when I was doing research on this subject was that there are several hadith narratives which give us this impression that the Quran we have today is incomplete. It is not the same Quran which was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the most glaring verse in this regard is the famous stoning verse which is found in the Sunan of Ibn Majah. And the words, I will not read out the whole verse, you can read it, you can just have us read it on the screen as well. But the verse which actually, according to our jurists, was revealed in the Quran and is no longer in the Quran, it's called the famous Rajam verse, and it says, Azaniyatu wa zani fajrimu ma al-battata. So it means that you stone to death adulterer and adulteress, and this has to be taken place at all cost. So this is how the stoning verse has been explained, and our jurists say that this is a verse that has been left out of the Quran. It is part of the Quran, but it is actually found in the Hadith. You will not find this verse in the Quran anywhere, but it is found in the Hadith, and they say that it is because one of the reasons on the basis of which the Sahaba and the Prophet himself did this stoning to death punishment was because of this Rajam verse. And some of the other books like Imam Bukhari's Jami' Sahih and Imam Muslim's Jami' Sahih, they also say that Hazrat Umar, a person of the caliber of Umar, had actually said that had he not feared that people would say that Umar had added a verse of the Quran to the book of God, he would have written that verse within the Quran. And although that verse is not cited in the Sahihain, just these words of Imam of Umar are cited, but the fact is that some of the secondary narratives like the Sunan of Ibn Majah, they actually say that the verse which Umar wanted to write on the margins or maybe in the text of the Quran was this stoning verse, and he said that had he not feared, people would say that Umar is adding to the book of God and he's making additions to the book of God. For fear of people, he would have done this, but because he feared people, he never got to do it. The second similar verse is also found in one of these collections, and this is called the suckling verse, the Raza'at verse. And as you can see, the verse being displayed before you. And the words are, it says that Aisha stated, Radhiyallahu anha, among what was revealed in the Quran was that 10 known suckling drops of milk of a child will make him a foster son and hence make him prohibited to marry. Later this verse was abrogated, a verse which mentioned 5 known drops by this verse. God's messenger died. Now pay attention please to these words. God's messenger died, but Tuwaffiya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, وَهُنَّ فِيمَا يُقْرَأُ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ. And at his death, this suckling verse was still found in the Quran. But it is no longer there in the Quran today. The hadith says the suckling verse was found in the Quran when the Prophet had died. At the death of the Prophet, this is what Aisha is saying, that the suckling verse, which means that if a mother suckles 5 drops of milk to a foster child, then that child will become her or his foster child. So this verse, Aisha says that when the Prophet died, was found in the Quran. Fima yuqra min al-Quran. Of course, today when we read the Quran, and much earlier on, right after Prophet Muhammad's demise, we don't find that verse in the Quran. So how come Aisha is saying that the verse is found in the Quran at the death of the Prophet, whilst the Quran that we know, or you know, or the rest of the Quran that I have introduced to you, no longer have this verse? Now the fourth question, viewers, that actually bugged me, I would say, or was disturbing to me, was the fact that the Quran that we have today has some scribal errors. Scribal error means khatati galti, which means that rasmul khat, or the way things are written, it has additional words. So as examples you can see, so you can see one of the verses of Surah Namal, if you can see the word alif is extra here. And if you open up any Quran that you have with you, except for the Saudi Qurans, because some of the Saudi Qurans, they have corrected this mistake. But in all of the Qurans that we have, we will find that there is an extra alif. You see, the underlined word is la uzabbihannahu. However, it is written as la uzabbihannahu, which in Arabic would translate as I shall not slaughter him. Whereas actually the word is I shall slaughter him. It is about the famous hudhud. And similarly, you can see in another verse in Surah Al Imran, it says la ilallahi tusharun. However, the actual word is la ilallahi tusharun. La is a negative word, which would mean that you will not be gathered towards the Almighty. However, with the addition of an extra alif there, the meaning would transform into the opposite. So this is a very common thing, and the Quran that we have with us has these scribal errors, and our Sahaba and later scholars preferred not to correct them, and they thought that if these are scribal errors, let them be. And obviously, I have an explanation for this, but the fact is that people who object to this, they say that how come the Quran that you read orally is different from the Quran that is written? Because if you read the way it is written, it will give an entirely opposite meaning. I'm just going to give this one example regarding the extra alif. As far as other examples are concerned, we have several words in which there are extra yas. For example, وَالسَّمَاءَ بَنَيْنَاهَا بِأَيْدٍ. Right. And then the word aid in Arabic is written as alif, ye or dal. Alif, ya and dal. However, it's written as alif, ya or ya. We have 2 yas here. You open up any Quran and it will have 2 ya. And one of our famous mufassir in Arabic, Imam Razi, has actually explained this by saying, because the word aid here implies the hands of God, and hence, since the hands of God are quite grand and big, therefore we have 2 yas in there. Obviously, this is something of a, I would say a joke, but still, this is how people would try to justify these errors as saying that these are actually not errors, but they are in fact normal pieces of writing. So I'm going to just skip this. There are several examples which I can give. Then we have this issue that the Usmanic codices that were sent to various territories. You know, in the time of Usman, several Qurans were prepared, and they were sent off to various territories of the Muslim Empire. And we know the 5 major areas were Kufa, Basra, Makkah, Medina, and Syria. So all these 5 codices, according to our history books, say that they were sent as copies made by Usman of the original, which was actually made by Abu Bakr anhu. And then, lo and behold, all these copies were different from one another. I would expect a copy to be a true copy. It would actually be a copy of the original. If I am going to copy out something, it has to be a copy of the original. But we find that, for example, the same verse, Wasa biha Ibrahim, you can see this is the verse of Surah Baqarah. However, in the Kufan and the Basran codex or the Quran, it was written as Ausa biha Ibrahim. The Wasa became Ausa. And there are several other examples. I'm just going to skip them because, again, it's just a matter of quoting more examples. You can see that the Kufan and the Medinan and the Syrian and Iraqi codices, they differed with one another because Usman in his own times, when he had copied these Qur'ans, he actually, as the Hadith says, never went through or never perhaps corrected them, and in fact he tried to accommodate the variants which I just introduced to you earlier on. The variants which were already there. So people say that he wanted to accommodate all these variants, and he accommodated them by actually writing them out in different copies, so that all of them could be adjusted. And then we have a lot of disparaging reports regarding the collection of the Quran, which of course in a very brief way I just point out a couple of things, as Amalisa, my mentor, just pointed out, that the most glaring thing in our history and these books which tell us regarding the collection of the Quran is the fact that it was finalized after the death of the Prophet, right after his death, with the help of two witnesses. Anyone who came with a verse of the Quran with two witnesses, and he testified that I heard this verse or I saw this verse being written, that particular verse was accepted. So I would have believed that the Quran that we know today is the same Quran, because a lot of people or scores of people had translated the same verse, and that would subvert any error being attributed to him. But on the contrary, what I find is that there are just two people testifying that this is the verse of the Quran. Okay, fine. And you know what? One of the hadith narratives says that Umar came up with the Rajam verse, which I just described to you, Azaniya to Azani Farjuhuma. And since he was the sole witness, his verse was not accepted by Usman. He said, since you are the only witness to this, I don't find any second person testifying, so take it home. I'm not going to put it. And had any one person come along with Umar, perhaps Usman would have accepted it. Again, I'm not just making up this whole part. What I'm saying is that things can go as far as this when, obviously, if you have to rely on these reports. And then there are several other things. I'm going to skip them because, again, I said this is the time factor, which makes me summarize some of these things. Then we have a very famous thing in these accounts, and that is we have different accounts of collection between the Shia and the Sunni sources. The Sunni sources say that the Quran was collected, as I would say, that the first person to collect the Quran after the Prophet Muhammad was Abu Bakr, and he, after a lot of memorizers had been killed in the Battle of Yamama, he, at the advice of Umar, asked Zayd ibn Sabit to have the Quran collected in a single format. However, what happened was that in this particular area, Ali anhu our Sunni sources say that right after the death of the Prophet, he came over to the Khulafai Rashidun, and the Prophet was yet to be buried. They were busy in the Saqifa of Bani Sa'ida in discussing his care. And he said to them that I have the Quran with me, whom the Prophet asked me to present it once I die. And here is the Quran. The Sunni sources say that the Khulafai Rashidun, later Khulafai Rashidun, Umar, Abu Bakr, and Usman anhu, they said that we do not want your Quran, take it away. We have our own Quran. And then on the other hand, the Shia sources say, they add upon this story and they say, when Ali brought this Quran to the first two caliphs and Usman, and they did not accept it, Ali was very angry with Allah. He went away and said, okay, now I'm going to consign this Quran to my own people and to the Imams after me, and the Imam Mahdi, who's going to appear just before the Day of Judgment. This original Quran will be with him, and then he will come and implement this Quran. If you don't want it, okay, fine, I'm taking it away. So this is how the Sunni and Shia accounts differ with one another. And then viewers, I'm going to skip some of the other questions because I think some of them are a little more technical. If I just perhaps skim through some of the other questions, one of the questions that again came to my mind was the fact that Surah Falaq and Surah Nas are two very prominent surahs of the Quran. Almost every person whom we know, all of us we learn these surahs by heart. And one of the famous companions of the Prophet Muhammad Abdullah ibn Masud, one of the earliest people to accept Islam in the Meccan period, he was the fifth or the sixth person to accept Islam. It is said that he never regarded these surahs to be part of the Quran. He said these are just du'as, these are just prayers, like the prayer of Qunut. As far as these prayers are concerned, they are not part of the Quran. The Quran ends at Surah Ahad, Surah Ikhlas. Surah Falak and Surah Nas have been wrongly placed as part of the Quran. They are not part of the Quran. That is what he said, and these narratives are found in all our famous Sirasita books. Then we have differences in the surah arrangement of the companion codices. You find narratives which say, for example, Abdullah bin Masud, again, same person I'm speaking of, the hadith of the Prophet, the arrangement of the surahs in his Quran was like this. So this is the numbering of the surahs the way it is found in Usman's codex. You can see 2, 4, 3, 7, 5, 6, 10. So they were arranged in a different format in his own Quran. And other than that, the same is the issue with the codex of Ubay ibn Ka'b and so on. So viewers, these are some of the questions which I have just presented before you. As far as the answers to these questions are concerned, I am now going to take up these answers and try to. So I think that I've been advised that the answers to these questions should be taken up after the Isha prayer. So I'll try to summarize these answers and also present my research in regard to these questions. So let's take a break for the Isha prayer.
थैंक यू शहजाद साहब। नमाज का ब्रेक करेंगे, 8:20 हो रहे हैं, आप लोग वुज़ू करके नमाज के लिए, और फिर 8:45 पर हम दोबारा यहाँ जमा होंगे। शहजाद साहब इन 5 सवालों पर अपनी राय आपके सामने रखें और हम आपसे तवक्को करते हैं कि अगर आपने कुछ सवाल करने हैं तो आप मौजूद से मुताल्लिक़ सवाल कर लेंगे, क्योंकि वक्त बहुत कम है, तो हम तरजीह देंगे उन्हीं सवालों को जो मौजूद से मुताल्लिक़ है। हमने आखिर में गांधी साहब से कंक्लूडिंग रिमार्क्स किए, आपका बहुत शुक्रिया।